Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. It is World Breastfeeding Week, and then it's gonna be Black Breastfeeding Week and Native Breastfeeding Week. This video is going to be in honor of Breastfeeding Week, and really August is like breastfeeding month. This week may not be happy to everyone, so I want to start by acknowledging that. You may have read my title, that I've breastfed for 7 years, and we'll get into that. But first of all, I want to acknowledge those who have had a really difficult time breast or chest feeding or feeding their baby with their bodies, because this week isn't happy for everyone. I understand that it's important for some of us to celebrate some challenges that we faced during our breast or chest feeding journeys, but it's also important to recognize the challenges that a lot of people face and just what this week can feel like. It's a privilege to be able to nurse, I think especially for as long as I have, and I think it has a lot to do with support and encouragement and just people on your side and on your team that know what they're talking about. And I really didn't have any of those things, but at the same time I probably had more than what other people had. I want you to know before we get into this video that I don't believe that breastfeeding is for everyone. If it's something that you just don't want to do, it's none of my business. This is another it's your body, your choice kind of situation. As a sexual assault survivor, I totally understand what it feels like to be triggered, especially while nursing and breast or chest feeding. But I just want those to know who are watching that maybe have had a really difficult time with breast or chest feeding, that you're not alone, and I hear you and I see you, and I'm sorry. So I'm gonna share my breastfeeding journey with you. So yeah, the title says I have breastfed for 7 years, and I was 18 years old when I started nursing. I'm 25 now, and it was weird because I kind of grew up from like a kid or a teen, I guess, to this mom, like overnight. This nursing, pregnant, whatever mom. And it's been a long and difficult road. I love to say that breastfeeding is natural, but it doesn't always come naturally, because that's 100% true. It's not something that's just easily done. When my first child latched, it was right after my traumatic birth. Well, not right after, it was literally hours after. I expected my first birth to be like a period, I guess, and some pain and stuff like that, but I was really fearful. I was afraid of the unknown because I'd never experienced birth before. So a lot of things happened with my provider. If you've seen my traumatic birth story, my first latch didn't happen like I thought it would. I thought my baby would be placed on my chest. I thought her vernix would be rubbed into her skin. I thought they would wait to cut the cord. This was everything I wrote on my birth plan, but my birth plan got thrown in the trash, literally. So no, I didn't get to breastfeed immediately like I thought I would. My baby was first given a bath and then placed under a heater rather than my chest, which didn't make sense to me. And then everyone proceeded to pass my baby around the room. She hadn't even eaten yet or smelled her mom, and everyone was passing her around the room. So by the time I got to her, it was time to attempt to latch, because like, you should feed a baby, right? Well, I tried, and I didn't know if I was doing it right. I think a nurse may have came in. I really needed someone. I needed a lactation consultant or someone trained to help me, because no one really told me what was right or wrong. They just kind of said, this is your baby's on your boob, and this is how you break the suction. I didn't even understand how to break the suction. I couldn't process any of that. It was time to start my breastfeeding journey, which didn't start off well. Then we were sent home the next day. I labored in the hospital, I believe, for 14 hours, and then I stayed that night. I had the baby, and then I left the next morning. As soon as we went home, nursing was scary. Like, all I could think about was, I can't see how much I'm producing. Where is all this milk going? Am I making milk? What is this golden looking stuff coming out of me? What's wrong with my body? But also, while worrying about that, I was nervous and I felt really sick, and I felt like I was going to jump out of my skin with anxiety. So like, all of these thoughts about, am I doing this right, just piled on top of everything else. My birth trauma, my anxiety that started like immediately after childbirth, it just all piled on top of each other. And that's how I would spend the first few years of my child's life. Nursing and anxious. But a lot of things happen postpartum that a lot of us don't even talk about. I lived with my parents at the time, which I believe is support. My household's never been functional, it's always been really dysfunctional, but it was still a roof over my head. I was provided with food and nourishment, and a lot of people don't even have that. Some teenagers who get pregnant unfortunately get like kicked out, and I had the privilege of being able to be with my parents who fed me. Still had to do like everything alone, and my partner was there, but he couldn't nurse and he couldn't get up with the baby and all of that jazz. My dad would sometimes swing with my baby, which would give me a break, and I remember crying once at like 6 a.m. because I hadn't slept yet. My baby was a few weeks old, and I was saying, "Dad, can you please just take her out on the porch, swing with her, and give her a bottle of formula?" Because I got sample packages in the mail. And he was like, "No, just let me swing with her and get her to sleep, and you rest, and I'll bring her back to you." I was so scared that she wasn't getting enough, and maybe that's why she was crying so much. But I think she was crying because she had gas, or maybe it was something I was eating. I don't know. I stopped like eating cheese, and I kind of became vegan for a while. I suppose that it helped. I just feel like my first child cried nonstop, and I was also trying to start as a college freshman online as soon as I gave birth. But at a few weeks old, my daughter got sick with something called RSV, which is a respiratory virus. So that put us in the hospital again, right after my traumatic birth. As soon as I got there, I got awful diarrhea and stomach thing going on, I think from my anxiety. I didn't sleep the whole first week in the hospital with her. I was up literally every hour nursing with no help. There was no lactation consultant, no nurses to really help or support me through that, I guess. And we weren't there for me anyways. But at the same time, her eating is still a huge concern, and making sure that she's fed while she's sick and getting those important antibodies and nutrients to fight off her virus would have been really important. They did bring a pump to the room, and I attempted to pump, and whenever my mom tried to give her a bottle, I felt jealous, which was weird. So I decided that I just wouldn't try bottles. I'm not sure what that was, but I think I really needed that sort of support. Whether or not my mom would always be there to help me, someone could help me if I, gave her a bottle every so often, but I decided not to. I got super anxious. I think that had a lot to do with me wanting to be the perfect mom, but at the same time, everything in my brain was like just crumbling and falling down because of my anxiety. I think if someone would have told me that if giving your baby a bottle or formula means that it would make you feel better mentally, that is being a good mom. There's nothing wrong with that, and that doesn't make you a bad mom. I think that we need support in a way that supports our mental health, our physical health, as well as our baby's physical health. I don't feel like there's enough support postpartum in general at all. And that's why I'm trying to get into the work that I'm getting into. Yeah, I had my dad and stuff, and my partner was there when he wasn't working, but I really had no one. I had no one to tell me that these things were okay. I just thought I needed to overcompensate to be a good mom, and I didn't really know what being a good mom meant, and I didn't know that being a good mom meant that my mental health was important. So fast forward a few years later, I had been nursing for 3 years, and it just hit me one day that, whoa, I've been dealing with like birth trauma and like depression and stuff, and I'm still nursing what happened to my baby. It was like one day I woke up out of this fog that I had been asleep in for a long time, and my baby was 3 years old, and I felt like I missed out on a majority of her life. It felt like one traumatic thing after another happened after her birth, like her hospitalization with RSV, and then later on she never walked at a year old, and we wondered why, and then she was misdiagnosed with muscular dystrophy, and then they apologized and said they got it wrong, she really has arthritis, and then she was put in casts for a really long time, and she never walked until she was almost 2 years old. We saw a lot of doctors for her arthritis, and she was put in physical therapy. So I breastfed in front of a lot of people that probably didn't care to see me nurse, but I didn't care because I was worried about my baby. She was horrified of doctors. She had to see so many doctors, and no one really in this area knew what to do, so eventually we had to drive like almost 2 hours away from our town. But there was one point. It seemed like women had the most issues with me nursing in front of them. Her physical therapist was a woman, and she said she had no problem with nursing. When she saw me nursing, who was 2 then, she threw a towel at me because we were at a physical fitness gym for physical therapy, and she said, "Could you please cover her up while you do that? I can't look you in the eyes and talk to you while you're doing that," referring to me nursing. She couldn't even say the word. And I was just like, no, because it was hot in there. My baby was sweating. Her cheeks were blood red from crying, from a stranger touching her legs and trying to straighten her body. I was like, no, if we're gonna do this, she's gonna have to nurse so she can be more calm and we can work with her. Eventually, we no longer saw her. We ended up seeing someone else. I think she became too uncomfortable with me nursing, and the other lady said she nursed all of her kids, so it was all good. And then eventually people in my family would complain, and people would say, you know, I don't want my husband to see that, or I don't want my 8-year-old son to see that because it's a boob. But my baby was eating. It wasn't like I was just shaking my tits, you know what I mean? My baby was eating, and my nipple was in her mouth, so it wasn't even shown. But if I tried to cover up, obviously she would like fight the cover, and my nipple would pop out of her mouth and everyone would see it. So like, I just felt alienated as a new parent. And this is where support could have been in handy. You know, someone could have been like, here's a water. Are you hungry? Do you need anything? But no, people were telling me to go nurse in hot cars. They were telling me to isolate myself from other family members or just not come when the baby was hungry. I feel like no one noticed anything going on with me and my anxiety, and I know that it's not other people's job to notice those things. I just wish that every postpartum parent had someone to let them know that they're doing the best that they can, but also check in on them and make sure they're okay. Because a mom who's dealing with things mentally, like anxiety and stuff like that, and going through all these different things as a brand new parent, as a teenager, they're terrified. Of course, my baby's health was super important, and I think that's why I kind of blacked out some of these bad experiences. But I do remember instances, you know, where I had to breastfeed my baby while she was getting an x-ray because she was crying so hard. And I had to hold her down and pop my boob out in front of so many doctors so they could get a vein and draw blood for her arthritis. And it was monthly blood work too, so it wasn't easy. And she was 1 year. But this is why I kind of chose to not stop breastfeeding. She was diagnosed with arthritis at a year old, and I knew that breast milk has anti-inflammatory properties and it just really good stuff in it. And arthritis is an autoimmune disease and it can deplete your immune system, so she needed my milk. And I just continued until she decided to stop. It wouldn't have been until she was 4 years old after my second child when she stopped nursing. The whole time I breastfed during my pregnancy, my skin would crawl and I would feel really icky and gross, and it just didn't feel good. But I still continued to nurse because I didn't want to wean her, though I should have followed the cues that my body was giving me to wean her. But I just continued because she was going to be a new big sister. Her world was going to change when she turned 4 because her birthday was a month before I was supposed to give birth. And I just wanted her to have all of the comfort and support that she needed until she wanted to stop. So, my decision. And I don't regret it. Really enjoyed that last bit nursing her so much. And then her sister was born and I tandem nursed, which was really difficult. I don't know how people do it all the time, because I had a brand new baby with a lip and tongue tie that I was trying to nurse on one boob with a 4-year-old hanging upside down over here, and I never got any pictures or anything. It was kind of bittersweet, but I was kind of not really over emotional about it because I was nursing a brand new baby and focused on that. Focused on making sure that she had a proper latch and was getting what she needed. And I couldn't afford the laser revision. I couldn't get my government insurance to cover it. Transportation or a ride, all of those things were difficult, but I can't see to drive and I still have to rely on my parents or my partner to get to places, so we just nursed through it. And now we have breastfed for 2 years, going on 3 years. Know that these things are not easily accessible to everyone. Support is not easily accessible to everyone, and this is a huge problem in America. If you see my thumbnail, you'll notice that this is what breastfeeding looks like on social media, and then this is the reality. What you see on social media isn't always the reality. These sweet stories are wonderful to read, but that isn't always the reality. This can be most of our realities. Lack of support, being alone and just fending for ourselves and learning what to do through Google. I couldn't gain weight. I was anxious yet again and insanely depressed, and people questioned my weight and told me to eat more, but I physically couldn't. And I'm sorry if that sounds like, you know, I'm complaining, but I mean, I had serious health issues. All these things and having no support, this is really the reality. This is the reality of what my breastfeeding journey looked like for the last 7 years. And it is completely isolating and lonely. World Breastfeeding Week can be for anyone who's attempted a latch, for anyone who has fed with a tube, or for anyone who's used donor milk or pumps or whatever. It's for anyone who supplements. If you've done any of those things, happy World Breastfeeding Week. And happy may not feel true to you either, because it definitely doesn't for me. Like, after I gave birth to my second child, I was up cooking breakfast 9 hours later for my family. I was doing dishes later that day when I really didn't feel good and it felt like my insides were coming out of my vagina. You can't force someone to do something they don't want to do, like breastfeed, and then not give them any options or help or support. You just can't do that, especially not to a new postpartum parent. I don't care how many kids they have. If that's their first, second, third, or fourth, we should support every parent. Let's start thinking about the parents and how can we support these parents who are feeding children with their bodies? How can this support be more accessible to everyone? Thank you for watching, subscribe if you'd like, and I'll see you next time.